Welcome back. Today I'm really proud and excited to present to you an interview with a fantastic guest, Dr. Alice Pailhès. She is a writer, a scientist, a magician, a TED speaker, and all of that she does really amazing. She recently published the book Psychology of Magic from Lab to Stage, co-written with Dr. Gustav Kuhn. And this book became an instant bestseller on The Vanishing Ink. So if you haven't got your copy already, I highly recommend you do it. In this interview, we're going to talk about Alice's way in magic, about psychology of magic and psychology of forcing, and how forcing can be also applied to our real life, about the problem of gender in magic and the problem of belief in magic, and many other topics which I personally believe are exciting for any person interested in magic or psychology of magic. So get yourself a drink, a tea or a coffee, sit back and enjoy. My name is Alex Romanov, this is Art of Impossible. Let's begin. Hi Alice, it's great to have you here on this channel.
Hello, thanks for having me.
We're going to talk today about your work, about you, about the book which recently came out. And first of all, I think on behalf of everybody who got this book and then the community itself, I just want to say a huge thank you for doing this. I think it's a great contribution to magic and to the way we see magic. At least for me, it was super illuminating and I enjoyed it a lot. And I think as everybody who got this book, I'm always interested with people such as you who do many different things and also combine different fields of activities. So if we were, strangers at just some event at a welcome drink, and I would ask you, hey Alice, so what is it that you do? How would you describe your job or your profession?
So it would depend on the context. Like I would probably say I'm a psychological scientist, and if I have like a guess that you might be interested, I would say that I'm specializing in magic tricks.
When these two things came together, like when did you realize that? Well, first of all, which came first, science or magic, and what was the point when you realized that you could do both?
So I was into magic as a teenager, and then I went to uni, like the psychology university, and so I had no idea we could combine everything. But I remember like one of my course in the very first year of psychology was about research methods, and we learned about the Barnum effect, so how like broad statements can feel as something very specific to us. And for this, the lecturer showed us a video of Darren Brown, and I just loved it. So I binge watched everything. I like fell in love with magic again in another way, with just like psychological subtleties. I learned a bit of hypnosis as well, and just like met a lot of magicians, hypnotists. And then I think it was during my third year, we had to do some small research projects. So I was really interested in the lessons about decision making, subtle influences on our choices, compliance without pressure techniques, which are, ways to make someone comply to your requests without putting like an obvious external pressure. And I was into magic at the same time alongside this. So I just wanted to make things fun for me and my participants. And I was like, okay, how can I combine everything? And I started to look into forcing techniques more. And then I started to do small research projects about this. So I think my very first research project was about the visual riffle force and Darren Brown 3 of diamonds mental force. And it was like looking into touch and this technique. So how can you like maybe touch someone briefly on the shoulder right before you do the trick and see whether this can increase the compliance and make them choose the card you want them to choose more often. Because touch in psychology is supposed to increase how your status is perceived. So we had this hypothesis that like by me doing a small touch on the shoulder before I was performing the trick would make the participants see me as higher status. And then because of this, they would maybe comply more with the implicit request of the trick and would choose the card more often, which kind of worked. That was quite interesting. So that was the very small, very first research project that I did. And then I just did others. And then I met Gustav and I ended up doing my entire PhD on this.
So the book, The Psychology of Magic, what was the most challenging about the research or the experiment you did for it?
I think what was quite challenging was the like getting access to the right knowledge, because so in psychology and like when you're doing research and like putting experiments together, you have to sometimes find like a very specific sentence saying that this is what people think, or like you can't like make up an experiment like this without having any theory behind it. So sometimes I would just like spend weeks going through magic books to well, find this specific sentence saying this is what magicians think in general to make up then a hypothesis and then an experiment and everything. And so the magic worlds tend to not be super well referenced. So it's kind of hard to get the right information and, just, find what you need when you're doing some research. So it was sometimes quite hard and challenging.
One of the things which I find impressive that you collected opinions on subjects on subject of magic from different magicians, which is also extremely big task because you have to look for very different sources. And one of those was a definition of magic and how magicians define magic. So do you have your favorite definition or do you have your personal definition of magic?
As a psychologist, I find the one most interesting looking into the cognitive conflict. So looking at magic as the cognitive conflict between what you believe in and what you believe is possible and what you're experiencing. So basically, like, also you can see it as a conflict between your rational mind and your emotional belief and, the intellectual belief that tells you that magic is impossible or, it's impossible to teleport a card from the deck to your back pocket or whatever. But on your emotional level, what you see like induces a belief that magic actually happened. And this is very interesting, this cognitive conflict between your rational mind, your emotional self, and what you believe in, what you believe is possible, and what actually is happening under your eyes.
You created a taxonomy of forcing, which, and I think taxonomies are in general a good way to structure knowledge about any subject. Do you think there is like the taxonomy of forcing and taxonomies in general can help us design better magic and do it in a more efficient way from the beginning?
I think so. Not necessarily for like all magicians, but for the one very interested in, working on this kind of stuff. I know it's probably not easy and not the most intuitive stuff to do, but I think there's some stuff to take out of it. Just, when you understand the psychological processes that a trick leverages, you can then like fine tune your performance and maximize the impact of the processes that you understand. So for instance, like if you know that the visual riffle force is based on visual saliency and the recency effect, which is the fact that we remember better the last items that we are presented with, you can make sure to then, use this to your advantage, but also probably create and design new tricks. So I don't know, for instance, maybe it's worth it to design a forcing technique in which you show different items, different one-then cards, and use this saliency and recency effect. So make sure that, you present items that are like in a specific size, and one is like a bit smaller, and this one is like at the end of the, the sequence that you show. I have no idea whether it would work or not, but I think looking into these principles and like making sure that you understand them can bring like some very good original new ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. It requires initial efforts, but I think it can pay off because you kind of move away from thinking about props first or method first and thinking more about the idea behind it, and then you can apply it in many more ways. And I think it actually brings us to another topic, which egocentric bias, as you call it in the book. So that basically magicians are biased because we do not perceive a magic performance in the same way as their audience. And I imagine that was a big part of your work, or a challenging part of your work, to kind of, as you said already, find the opinions which magicians have about magic, and then to create a hypothesis and challenge them. And for instance, for me, like, what's also caught my attention, that like it's not true that the first or the last trick are the ones which are better remembered, which sort of ruined my world a little bit, because now I not ruins, but it actually makes my life easy, I would say, because I don't focus so much on that. But it's interesting because for me it was such a natural and obvious thought. Like, of course, it's the first and the open and the close that are the most important. And in the end, when you think about it, why did I learn? Why do I think that? Do you have like another examples when you kind of went, got to believe that was so natural for everyone, but it's in the end not supported by the experiments that you did?
Yeah, we had quite some surprises. It was amazing. So I think the main one is the crosscut force. So looking into the magic literature and also actually properly asking magicians with a survey, magicians tend to think that the crosscut force is based on time delay and attentional misdirection. So when you do the cross shape, you have this moment of misdirection where you ask the person a question just to like draw their attention away from the deck a bit and create this delay where people are not going to be able to properly remember where is their card. And so this is what is written in the magic literature. And when we asked, I think about 70 to like 90 magicians, what were the most important factors for the success of this force, this is what they said: time delay and attentional misdirection. So we wanted to test this out, and we had this hypothesis, right, that time delay and attentional misdirection were the things that were making the trick work. So we tested this. We had 3 different conditions. We had a kind of normal condition. So I was doing the crosscut force in the usual way, asking a question like, what's your name again, to create the time delay and the misdirection parts. We had a condition called, I think, time delay. So I was just kind of awkwardly staring at the deck for 5 seconds just to create time delay without attentional misdirection. And we had the no misdirection at all condition. So no time delay, no misdirection at all. I was just doing the cross and then take your cards without any misdirection at all. This makes me think, that's like where experiments are quite funny, because you can just do crazy things that you wouldn't dare to do in, a proper performance. So that's quite fun. And so we had this hypothesis that as we were removing these 2 layers of deception, people would understand that they were forced more easily. And this is not what happened at all. So we had 4 people out of 90 who understood that they were forced, and 2 of them were in the normal condition. So basically we were like very surprised, but the time delay like doesn't seem to have any impact on the force, and it works just as well without it. So that was a big surprise, and we tried to like break the trick and make it even simpler, and not even do the cross in the end, just like cut the deck and say take your card, which was the top card from the beginning. And even in those conditions, and we even had numbers, like big numbers on the back of each card to make it very easy to follow. And there were many people still not understanding that they were forced. So, and this is something that we find quite often. Like, this is the surprising thing for me. Like, most of the time, the tricks were actually more robust than what you would think and what you read in the magic literature. It's good news for magicians. It's like, it's great, actually. We are like fooled way more easily than we would think.
That's good news. I agree. And also, I just think right away, like we had a conversation with Gustav, then when he said that you actually can get away with much more than you think you can. And I think we tend to overcomplicate things as magicians. I liked how when you're talking about forces, and you also mentioned it in your TED talk, which I think was from 2020, when you were talking about forces, that we are overall being forced things regularly, and it's not just about magic. Because if you see that our choices can be easily manipulated with magic, of course you can extrapolate it and see that our choices are manipulated by also in different ways, and like in marketing or politics. A simple example: if you go to a supermarket, you see the product which on your eye level you have more inclination to buy them because it's just an easy option for your brain, and so it's a kind of forcing in the end, forcing us to get the products which are standing on the eye level. So after learning so much about how easy we are in this way to manipulate, what do you think, how can we avoid it, and how just we can be more conscious of our choices?
I think there are several ways, but the first step is really to understand that these biases exist and how they work. Just like learn about common cognitive biases and heuristics, so the shortcuts that our brain tends to take, such as the anchoring bias, availability, heuristic, confirmation bias, and others, which are very interesting to use as magicians as well, by the way. And just being able to recognize them and how they work, and just start to see when you might be, falling prey to them, and what are the conditions that you may be kind of more sensitive to different influences. So just understand yourself better, and like know, for instance, that, when you're tired, when you have like a lot of external stimulations, you have a lot of your mind or on your mind, these kind of stuff are going to make you way more sensitive to all kind of influences, and it's probably not the best moment to make a decision. Also just use critical thinking, always ask questions, look for evidence, examine the logic behind the arguments that you're hearing, diversify your information, seek out different types of informations, but also from different sources, and make sure that you don't only pay attention to the ones that you like or that confirm your beliefs, is very important as well. take your time. Like, we also know that when we are rushed, it's like very easy to be in automatic type of thinking. And just recognize that you're making a decision is something that we actually learned from another forcing technique, the position force, where we had like 4 cards on the table and asking people to touch any cards. We know that like most people are right-handed and will go for the third one from the left, as it's the easiest to touch. But if you just say to people, rather than touch a card, and you say, choose a card and then touch it, just adding this choose a card and making it obvious that you're making a decision lowers the percentage of people going for this easier card. So just being able to pause a bit and recognize that you're taking a decision, and maybe if it's in the supermarkets, being able to say, okay, I'm not just going to look at the items right under my eyes, but look for other stuff. Just simple things like this. And I think I would suspect that mindfulness and meditations are good practices as well, just to focus your awareness and be more present in these kind of processes as well.
In the book, you also speak about a topic which I think is very important, like presenting magic, and we touched on this also briefly with Gustav. That basically, if you tell people that the following presentation is genuine psychic phenomenon, for example, then people who already believe that this can happen, this exists, they will believe it. And even if you then tell them that it's tricks, it might not help because they already have this pre-existing belief. And as you also mentioned in the book, many magicians also, such as like Turner Brown, they find sort of a middle ground. So they won't make claims like Uri Geller that they are for real, but they will rather present everything as psychology, reading body language, and all of this cool stuff, which we also seen like on series like Mentalism, and which people which is not as big of the claim as the supernatural powers, but still it's something that people believe might be real. So what is wrong with it? If anything is wrong with it, what's your personal thoughts about that?
Yeah, that's a very tough question for me because I'm torn about this one. Like, I know that the performances that I usually really liked are these ones are the ones like presented with maybe pseudo-scientific stuff. Like Darren Brown says that he uses psychological subtleties when he's not really, well, not all the time, for sure. And I love them, but also I'm very aware as a scientist that it can cause several issues. So when you're presenting a trick as psychological experiments, you can just blur the lines between entertainment and science, and this may lead to misunderstanding about the nature of psychology and psychological processes. So it tends to promote pseudoscience. So many mentalists, for instance, can like appear to have capabilities such as mind reading, telepathy, precognition, but also body language reading or like alleged subtle influences techniques, which are not supported by empirical evidence. And so if these performances are framed as psychological experiments, they can contribute to spread pseudoscientific beliefs for sure. And this is actually a debate I had just like yesterday with my boyfriend, who's a magician, and another magician friend. And I was just trying to make them understand it's also important because it's not just at the individual level. It's not like just your spectators right here at this moment, but it can also become something like way more systemic. And if you like start to, like create these false beliefs in people, you might have, university investing money and time in research which is not based on real stuff, or companies investing and like paying people to read subtle body language signs during hiring processes, and ending up hiring some people based on this when it's not actually reliable at all. So this is where it's like, I think, important as magicians to recognize that it's not your job to make. So some people have like some beliefs, pre-existing beliefs, like some people are religious, believe in some stuff, whatever. I don't think it's your job as a magician to make them change their minds, but it is your responsibility, I think, to be aware of what you're doing and not actually create new erroneous beliefs inside people who didn't have any belief in the first place. So I don't have the right answer on how to properly address this, but I think it's good to have this kind of conversations and just be aware of the risks behind it.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks. I mean, I think it's yeah, it's already a good start just to make be as you as in previous topic, be more aware of it and also about the impact it can have. Moving to another yet like controversial topic, not controversial actually. It's quite a I think it's also a topic which is should be brought up in conversations more regularly. It's gender bias in magic, and we all know that unfortunately still up to this day a huge bigger percent of magicians are male, and also it influenced the public image of a magician. But what was quite shocking about the experiments that you describe in the book is that the information that spectators have about the gender of the performer influence their perception of the level of skill and the level of difficulty of this trick, which is quite sad to be honest. So why do you think it's still the case, and what do you think magicians could do about this?
I think, as in many other fields, it's a complex issue that kind of stems from very deep-seated cultural norms, stereotypes, and expectations. And magic has traditionally been a male-dominated field, so the stereotypical image of a magician is often a man, and this norm can be very hard to break, whether it's for magicians who might not see themselves represented in the field, but also for audiences who might have ingrained expectations about what a magician who should look like. Um, and magic often involves taking also on a role like of power and control, challenging the audience, manipulating the perception. So I suspect that also these characteristics might kind of clash with societal expectations about gender roles and behaviors, and can also create additional issues for women. Um, but I do think there are some things to do, just promote diversity in general, try to encourage and support women who are interested in magic, and this could involve like mentorship, scholarships, or like any other initiatives. Have this type of conversations as well, and just encourage magicians of all genders to challenge traditional magic stereotypes, and present diverse images of what a magician can be as well. I remember like this year, it was this year, like in one of the Blackpool convention performance, I think it was a couple, and they were doing this kind of performance with chains and boxes and stuff like this. But the guy was the one in like being chained up and in the box, like just completely reversed, like compared to what we actually see usually. And it was like it's not the type of magic that I usually like, but it was nice to see that they had this reflection and to actually show something different. So I think seeing more of this stuff can help as well, and create inclusive magic societies, clubs, events, and highlight maybe successful magicians of like women and the diverse genders more if we can be good. And yeah, just educate about the biases and read more. And I hope the experiments that we did can also like raise awareness about the issue and make people reflect on what can be done.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a great message. It's a great message to the magic community, also to be more aware of it. And yeah, I guess thank you for being a role model and talking about this, because I think it's more than important, because we are in an age when it should be actually left behind a long time ago. So I hope we're heading there. Yeah, well, speaking about again magic community and magicians. Now it's getting to more like to the final part of the interview was just more of your personal preferences, talking about more of your personal, taste in magic and your interest. So if you could book like a 1 hour slot, let's say with any magician who you haven't met yet, and it could be either a magician from the past who is not long with us, or a magician who is alive, but you could just have 1 hour to ask any questions you like about methods or theory or whichever it is. So who would you like to speak to?
Well, my initial thought would be Darren Brown for sure, because well, he's my idol, and He's the one who gave me, just this desire to go into psychological subtleties more and learn about forcing and actually do some research. But I would also probably think about John Canasta, who's, just like he was just using such an innovative approach, and he was so bold in what he was doing, just like taking risk and actually doing some proper experiments. I think he was just, if it wasn't working, it wasn't working, but he has just, being this warm, charismatic energy and showmanship and I think I would really appreciate having a chat with him.
If you were asked to just make a list of your personal like top 3 magicians, and I know it's a tricky one, but for the purpose of experiment, just top 3 magic performance.
Well, I would have to put Darren Brown in there for sure, because every time I see a show, I'm just going back to this wonder and this childlike state. I would maybe put Teller or Penn and Teller, because I think they are very creative and innovative as well. And I really like the way Teller is thinking about magic. And I think I would put Luc Germain, because he's just such a creative, charismatic genius to me. I just love listening to his thought as well. And every time at the session, it's just a pleasure to be there and see him.
Yeah, that's a great list. And then 3 books on magic that you think that every magician should read.
I guess looking to the theory ones, I would probably say like Strong Magic by Ortiz. Because I think the whole thinking is amazing, and just emphasizes the importance of understanding and considering the audience's perspective as well to create magic that truly resonates. Probably The Magic Way by Pailhès, just because again it's so clever and there's a lot to take out from. And I would, because I'm into mentalism quite a lot, I would probably put 13 Steps to Mentalism by Corinda as well.
What is your next big project?
So right now we collected quite a lot of data at the session with Gustav on what magicians think, looking into what magicians think may what skills make an expert in magic, what different types of exposure and what's acceptable, not acceptable, what kind of things people know about magic. So we collected this in the first place, and now we just collected a new bunch of data, kind of asking the same questions but to lay people, and how we are going to compare everything. So we are going to write up a paper about this. We have some quite interesting stuff in there. We have to work also on some placebo stuff, so using mentalism as a tool to create placebo effects. So for instance, just making people believe that a machine is actually influencing their mind or reading their minds thanks to mentalism, and then saying, okay, so this machine, now that you're convinced, can enhance your creativity, for instance, and see whether we can actually enhance people's creativity or self-control, for instance, based on this fake proof that the machine has an impact on your brain. So I'm very looking forward to getting some data on this. And then probably performing at some point would be a very good project. So we'll see.
And this is amazing. Well, first of all, the placebo. I'm really looking forward to if it will be a paper or an article or a book. Sounds super exciting. And for performing, I guess, you just need to announce it, and then you'll have more than enough spectators. maybe magicians as well, which I know can be uncomfortable, but still, I'm pretty sure that with the knowledge and the background that you have, you'll be just, killing it. That's great plans. And then we'll be wrapping up. And again, just for the last time, we'll just show the book into the camera. So for those who haven't got it yet, I highly recommend it. Amazing book. It's something that's really pleasure to read, and also gives you lots of interesting insights. So thank you for doing that, and it was great talking to you. Looking forward to all the new exciting stuff that you will reveal to the magic community in the future.
Thanks, Alex. It was really nice to have a chat with you.